a blank piece of paper blowing in the wind. It is hard to disagree with the Prime Minister's description of Kemi Badenoch's 3-month leadership of the Conservative Party. As Sir Keir knows better than most, the work of the opposition is to court popularity and to hitch a ride on every passing bandwagon. From this position, the opposition throws as much political mud at the government as possible, hoping enough sticks for long enough to win an election. Badenoch, who has declared that there will be no policy renewals until nearer the next election, has signaled that this will be her party's campaign strategy for the next 4 years. This explains the scattergun approach to last week's questioning of the Prime Minister. Badenoch baited Starmer into backing his ailing Finance Minister Rachel Reeves. The Tory leader had less success when raising the resignation of former Treasury Minister Tulip Siddick to suggest sleaze at the heart of government. And Badenoch was on a hiding to nothing when attempting to paint Labour as anti-British over the Chagos Islands negotiations, which began rather unhelpfully under the previous Conservative administration. But so early in the Parliament, what else can the Tories do? More, much more, is the cry from GB News and the myriad social media outlets devoted to bringing down this Labour government. Harrying Sir Keir's leadership of Britain is not enough for such channels. Their increasingly shrill commentary reflects the fact that the size of Labour's majority makes the government impregnable for at least 4 more years. The Tories are a long way from power, meaning that Badenoch must concentrate on how to stay active, while saying nothing of note in the short to medium term. Her first big speech of 2025 to the Onward think tank followed this mandate. It was little more than a series of Tory media talking points and a general wish list. Badenoch began with a good line, quoting the American economist Thomas Sowell as saying, "You help others when you tell the truth. But, according to Sowell, you help yourself when you say what others want to hear." Alas, Badenoch then helped herself to the audience's applause with predictable lines of bombast and outrage. The North West Essex MP talked about the Conservatives being under new leadership and promised to behave differently. She heralded the importance of hard work, prosperity, entrepreneurship and regaining trust. The Tory party would fix the damage Labour is creating, she said. The leader then summoned the spirit of 2019 by claiming that Conservatives intended to give back the country to the British people. Who had stolen the nation and how it would be returned were not explained. And of course, Badenoch was again concerned by the failure of immigrants to integrate and the scandal of the grooming gangs. The Conservative leader may well feel that her parliamentary intervention and her later meeting with victims of the pedophiles forced a major government concession. The announcement by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper that Dame Louise Casey would head a national review of the scale of grooming gangs was, of course, a government retreat. The review is not the full national inquiry that Badenoch had demanded, but as the Guardian newspaper noted, it does mark a notable shift in position by the government. Cooper's announcement came too late for the grooming gang scandal to be the centerpiece of Badenoch's speech. Trumpeting a victory over a beleaguered government might have been the change of tone that would have prevented Sky News reporter Sam Coates from admitting that he found Badenoch's speech to be depressing. GB News reporter Chris Hope was also unimpressed by Badenoch's words. He began his question to the Conservative leader with several vexing assertions. He said Badenoch's speech had been policy-free. He reminded her that the Conservative Party is going backwards, according to the latest YouGov poll. As a peroration, Hope wanted to know why Badenoch had allowed Nigel Farage to make all the running, to become the voice of the right. He demanded a yes or no answer to whether Badenoch would consent to a merger between the Conservatives and Reform to beat Labour at the next election. The journalist had struck a nerve. Badenoch described the questions as wonderful, whilst in her mind, she searched for an answer that would command the room, her party, Reform voters and the British public. Badenoch said a union with Reform was not possible, on the basis that Farage wants to destroy the Conservative Party. Why on earth would we merge with that? She asked rhetorically. but psephologists would have noted that that wasn't a full-throated no. Farage could moderate his opinion, or be removed from his position as leader of the political entity he owns, and the merger could happen. Badenoch then doubled down on her own position of no policy-making for 2 years. She declared an aversion to announcements without plans and pointed to the Conservative commitment to lowering taxes and reversing Labour's family farm tax as evidence of her critical thinking. Badenoch promised that her party would discuss the problems that Britain faces, gather experts, and formulate the appropriate remedies. The whole process would take time. But how long will it take? Who will be involved in this process, and when can we expect it to be completed? Do you really need 2 years to come up with a Badenochian prescription for ailing Britain? Of course, Badenoch could opt for a Sir Humphrey-esque answer to the growing demand for action this day. Sir Humphrey, the legendary caricature of an oleaginous senior British civil servant, made famous in the Yes Minister series, would heartily agree that the Conservative Party must have shovel-ready policies. He would go on to say that everything would be revealed in the fullness of time, or at the appropriate juncture, when circumstances allow. This obfuscation is essentially what Badenoch is planning to do for another 2 years, at least. In a phone-in show hosted by the kindly Ian Dale, Badenoch was accused of attacking Nigel Farage for his lack of policies, even though people still didn't know what Badenoch stood for. This question cannot be swatted away easily. Badenoch is playing for time, whilst raising expectations that the Conservative Policy Review will deliver solutions and not soundbites. Should she fail to deliver, or be less than convincing in her vision of conservatism for the 2030s, Badenoch will only irritate her audience and imperil her position as leader. Yet as soon as Badenoch lets slip her thinking, for example, on an issue such as the triple lock on pensions, she is pounced upon by opponents, who claim the Tories will cut state pensions when they return to government. Brexit restricts the chances of a new economic model for Britain. Nothing would suggest that Badenoch has identified a method for tackling rising non-Western immigration, when her predecessor Rishi Sunak failed so spectacularly to stop the small boats. Kemi might not be interested in the razzle-dazzle of media relations, but a political leader cannot be so delusional as to believe that political events bend to the leader's will. Badenoch knows that she cannot play a waiting game until 2027, but as she has nothing new to say, the Conservative leader is already in defensive mode. The party lost 4 million votes to reform last July, and Badenoch knows that her political fortunes rely on bringing the majority of those voters back into the Conservative fold. Badenoch is also tasked with preventing a split within Conservative ranks. That is why she bangs on and on about migrants, when the business constituency in her own party wants looser controls that would allow them to fill skill shortages. But playing the migrant card is not soothing Conservative voters. Earlier this month, the Telegraph newspaper confirmed that the clock was ticking on Badenoch's leadership. Kemi Badenoch has now been Tory leader for longer than Liz Truss, the newspaper thundered. But whether she will still be in the job this time next year is very much a live question in Conservative circles. This was just the latest news hit piece to hint that the Tories' talent for regicide has not gone away. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please like, share and subscribe to this channel. This helps us to keep going and to reach more people with these updates on Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the Conservative Party and the challenges she faces. See you next time.